Hello again, and thank you for joining us. My name is Charlie Joyce, and I'm happy to welcome you to the Providence College Podcast. Once again, we are joined by our producer, Chris Judge, of the class of 2005. Our guest today is Steve Smith, a 1973 PC graduate and the lead singer and frontman for Steve Smith and the Nakeds. Steve and his 10-person band are celebrating their 46th year as one of the Northeast's premier rhythm and blues and rock and roll bands. Steve and the members of the original band, Naked Truth, as well as the Nakeds, all were inducted into the Rhode Island Music Hall of Fame in 2013. The band's song list numbers over 90, including more than a dozen original pieces. They have produced one album and 3 CDs. Steve Smith and the Nakeds has played with the likes of Clarence Clemons of Bruce Springsteen and the E Street Band fame, and with John Cafferty and the Beaver Brown Band. Cafferty, by the way, is Steve Smith's cousin. And on another side note, Steve is a Friar hockey alum, having played for 2 years under the legendary Lou Lamoriello. Welcome to the Providence College Podcast, Steve.
Well, thank you for having me.
46 years of singing and directing, that's crazy impressive, Steve.
Yeah, that's a long time. That's just with the Nakeds, too. So when I started college here, I played hockey, and I was coming to school to play hockey for Lou. And just wasn't in the cards, I guess. I came back my sophomore year, but I decided to move on to bigger and better things, I guess.
Certainly. What kind of gigs and how often are you doing them these days?
Well, we average three and a half nights a week. The last few years, it's been kind of slowing down a little bit. The nightclub and business is it's in a downswing right about now, but it goes up and down, and it's been like that for the last 46 years. So.
Yeah, I bet you have to be very flexible. So this is more of a seasonal thing than anything else.
It has become a seasonal thing, but years ago, I mean, we used to work 7 nights a week, and now it's basically become a weekend type of thing, holiday. But we do a lot of corporate events, we do a lot of private parties, and we do a lot of our own private shows too. So, we do okay.
How do you feel about the current makeup and sound of the band? And I know you were especially like the horn instruments.
Yeah, well, it's always been a brass-driven band, and over the years it's evolved into. It started out with 4 horns, and then it went down to 3, and then now it's back to 5. And we love it. We love the way it. And when Clarence used to play with the band, he used to be 6. So,
what is distinct, I think, about you, Steve, is that your involvement in music started very early in your childhood, and it never really stopped, including when you were a student here at PC and were involved in bands. Tell us about your first experiences and memories in music as a child, and I know that some of those summers down in South County came into play in that.
That was a big part of the whole thing. My first recollection of entertaining in front of my family was when I was 4 years old, and my father had the fortitude to notice that I had a good voice, and my father was very much into the arts, and he was also an athlete. And I come from a family of 6, and he treated each of us individually. He recognized our talent, and unfortunately for me, he sent me for voice lessons when I was 7 years old. So didn't go over with the kids too big with the kids on the block, but it was a blessing for me, and I thank my father for that.
Much of your evolving interest in music happened alongside your cousin, John Cafferty, who, of course, is a great vocalist and guitarist. You were very close to him as a youngster. Tell us about that relationship and how it evolved or developed, actually, later in your playing careers.
Well, we grew up in the same beach house every summer together. There were 3 families living in one small cottage every summer at Roy Carpenter's Beach, and he had 2 sisters, so I was his brother. So we grew up together. We bought our first Beatle records together. We listened to our first music together. We used to go to the movies every Saturday together, and we saw Elvis and James Brown and John Wayne, and we would meet in the wintertime at the community theater in Centerdale. And, we grew up in the same lounge chair, reading Mad magazines and Batman comic books together. So we're very close. We're very, very close. Our family's close,
Yeah. Besides John, who would be some of the big names you've enjoyed playing with the most during your career?
Well, the big man, Clarence Clemons. I mean, there's nobody bigger than him. And we became friends through a mishap. A friend of ours who died of obesity, and we met at the funeral. We were both pallbearers for one of our friends, Mr. Paul Gurdon, who had a problem with obesity. At 28, he was diagnosed with obesity. He weighed 275 pounds, and at his death at 32, he weighed 575 pounds. And while, at the coalition, after the funeral, me and Clarence were talking about how could this happen to someone. So we started doing some research on it, and we found out that it was a disease. And my friend Paul was very embarrassed about going to the hospital because they didn't have a bed for him. They didn't have a scale to weigh him on. They actually took him down to the produce scale in the hospital on the loading dock and weighed him because they didn't have things. So me and Clarence decided at that point we would start a benefit in his name to raise money to build some of these things. No wheelchairs, no scales, no beds. And to my own gratitude, patting my own back, we had the first obese wheelchair ever made, I believe. They used to call me and ask me to come and look at it. And I'm like, I don't know anything about wheelchairs. But, and I looked at all the prototypes, and they took my advice on stuff like that. We had a scale made that they could actually take to the bed, roll a guy on it, or have him sit up on it and weigh him there. And then they started to make bigger beds. And it was something that I think me and Clarence brought to the public's awareness. I'm not sure. I'm not taking credit for it, but it was unbelievable. And then years later, Dick Gregory got into the obesity thing, and it became an issue. But I think we kind of planted the seed for that. And we had one of those wheelchairs donated to Miriam Hospital for their weight loss program because they didn't have one. So there's a chair in Paul Gurdon's name at Miriam Hospital donated by me and Clarence Clemons and the Nakeds.
What a wonderful thing.
Yeah.
What a wonderful thing. Were you very close to Clarence Clemons? What kind of an individual was he? Obviously a great sax player.
Yeah, we started our friendship as friends, and he was like the greatest human being you'll ever meet, the most kind and gentlest guy you'll ever meet. And we had more fun when we weren't working than when we were working. And it started in '83 doing the benefits for Paul Gurdon, but then over the years, when the E Street Band broke up, he wasn't working. And he called me. I called him and I said, listen, if you want to come up, for a couple of weeks, I'll put some shows together. We can go out and play. And he was all over it. In the first 2 years, I would call him. And then the third year, as he got farther away from the E Street Band, he would call me and say, what are we doing this summer? And it turned out to be 2 weeks, then it was a month, then, up until 1996, when the E Street Band got back together again, it was 20 to 30 shows a year, including traveling to Las Vegas, to going to Canada, playing the Ottawa Blues Festival, B.B. King's in New York City. And I always tell people, if they really want to know the real Clarence Clemons, they should go on to on YouTube, and there's one of the last years we played together, I think it was the last summer, we were doing a show at B.B. King's. And don't listen to the music of the songs. Listen to what Clarence says between the songs, how he talks to the audience and how he talks to the people. That's the real Clarence Clemons.
Who else in the industry that you've played with, did you really relate well to? And
Well, we do a benefit every year. This will be our 19th year, which I became the chairman of last year. It's called Rock and Jock Charities. And we raise money. My cousin and John have done so many benefits and fundraisers for different people. We decided to bring, with our connections, we decided to bring some of this back to Rhode Island. and helped to raise money for kids in Rhode Island. We've played all over the country for different charity events. So 19 years ago, we started Rock and Jock Charities, and we started bringing and tapping into John's connections, bringing in like people from Orleans, people from, different bands that he worked with. So we've had Mike Reno from Loverboy, we've had Jimmy Jameson from Survivor, Steve O'Geary from Journey, Clarence played his show, we brought the Temptations in. And all of these people that I'm talking about they don't donate their time because they have to be compensated for their travel and everything else. But they come in for less than $1 to play and raise money for our kids in Rhode Island. So there's so many people out there that have helped us, and they do it because of the brotherhood of musicians, if you know what I'm talking about. But there are so many nice people out there. And me and John, we just kept it going over the years. And it's amazing. And last year we had Larry Braggs from Tower of Power and Charlie Hund from Foghat. And I made a phone call and I said, here's what we do every year. We just need you to come. And there's not a lot of money involved. We'll get you here. We'll put you up. We'll have a good time and we'll make money for kids. And they all go, when do I have to be there?
Great. Obviously, philanthropy seems to be really important to you.
It very much so is.
How was that instilled, Steve?
Well, I went to Catholic school. I went to public high school, thank God, because I played hockey there. And then I went to Providence College. So, I've been brought up in a my childhood was, charity and giving back, and it's important to give back. I was given a gift, and I thank God every day for the gift I have, and I have to share it, and I share it by giving back, and I use my talent to help other people.
You and your band are known as a powerhouse rhythm and blues band. Has R&B and the music that you play changed much over the decades?
Oh God, yeah. R&B now is considered, like rap music and that type of thing. We do we're the golden oldie R&B thing. R&B artists have taken it to a different level, and because of technology and computers and everything else, it's changed drastically. It's changed drastically. But the benefit of our band is, and the novelty of our band is that we still play our own instruments. They're not tracks. They're not. When you see the Nakeds, you're seeing the real deal.
At one point in your career in the mid-1980s, I think it was, you and your band were at somewhat of a crossroads. You were well known. You were pursuing a record deal had been pursuing a record deal for a while, and you began to rethink and refine your approach to the music business. What was it like at the time, and what realities did you come to in terms of the band's purpose?
Well, when the substance abuse came through in the 80s, the 80s were a real bad time. Cocaine was prevalent everywhere, and not just in the nightclub scene, but I'm telling you, everywhere. And we never got into that. Our focus had always been on the music, not on what the music brought with it, not the golden idols, I can honestly and truthfully tell you that cocaine has never been introduced to my body, never. I've always been an athlete. I've always been into health. But that period of time was so bad. So the laws came, restricting, the drinking age went back to 21. The drinking age was 18 from till the middle of the 80s. So we worked 7 nights a week. But when the drinking age went back to 21, it took it out of college and it took it out of the nightclub scene, and the work dried up. So we had to reposition ourselves. So we were doing it. We were making a living doing this, and because the nightclub scene and the college scene dried up, we needed to reinvent the band. But we started to take people out of the band, and when someone would leave, in order to make a living doing this, we would stop. We would cut people from the band. We got to a point where we were awful, So we just said, you know what? If we're not going to make any money and we're not going to be good, let's go back to the full-blown Nakeds. And that's when we put the 5 horns back in. We just put it on stage, and it had a reverse effect. It brought us back. Skimping is not the answer.
How does music make you feel? You've expressed some nice emotions. Is it an emotional experience for you? Tell us a little bit about that.
I mean, my father loved music, and he introduced. I mean, I loved, because of going to the community theater every Saturday. We saw everything. We saw musicals. We saw Elvis. We saw James Brown. We saw westerns, but we were introduced to musicals too, and I love musicals, and my father loved musicals, so it's just music makes you it's a getaway for everyone. Luckily for me, it's my job, and I was given this gift, so it's just, I don't know, it's my life,
Let's turn away from the lights and sounds for a minute, Steve. As the band leader, you run the business side. Yeah. What are your biggest responsibilities, and does that aspect of the band get arduous at all at times?
Yeah, well, I've always said this: the Nakeds, someone has to be in charge, okay? And I'm the focal point, and I'm in front, and my voice is what doesn't sell the band, but at one point in our career, it was needs to be more directed toward me. And I'm not a dictator, but when you have 10 individuals, someone has to take the reins. So I've made mistakes, and I'll tell guys, here's what we're going to do. And I've had a couple of times where they've said, well, we'll do it this time, but we better discuss it the next time. So, everybody has a voice in what goes on, but somebody has to be the leader, and unfortunately, it's me.
At PC, you were one of the first art majors and studied graphic design. That ended up being very useful later in your music career and life, did it not?
Yes, it did. I keep going back to my father, but I wanted to play. I played hockey in high school, and I was all state in high school, all suburban. And I had different schools approach me to play hockey, but my father was also a Friars fan, and he, we went to every basketball game when we were kids. We listened to it on the radio, and, I had PC instilled in my heart. So when I got the letter of acceptance to come here, my father said, well, what do you want to do? I said, well, I want to go to PC, but I had a full ride to University of Alabama, Huntsville to play hockey. And that was 1969. And I'm thinking, do I want to go to Alabama? I mean, you turn on the TV every day, there were riots and this and that. And I said, how good could their team be? Well, they were Division I back then, and they still are. And I also often question myself, should I have gone to Alabama and got a free ride, But I ended up coming to PC because I knew my father loved it. So I started out as a history major, and unfortunately, I had to go to practice, go to school, and go to work because there were no scholarships back. There were 3 scholarships for hockey. Everything else was basically basketball. There was 1 full-time and 2 part-time. And Lou used to recruit Canadians for the 3 scholarships. So then he would recruit the pond players, all the people from Smithfield, Pontigansett, Boroughville, all the kids who grew up on the ponds, which I did. And it was the greatest thrill of my life to put on a PC uniform and play hockey for them at the old Rhode Island Auditorium. But financially, it wasn't feasible for me, and I had to be in the class. I'm not a student. I was never a student. I was an AB student, and I had to be in the class. And when we went and played hockey, we'd go out away for a week. I'd miss a week worth of classes, and I'd started failing. And before hockey season, I was just cutting it. After hockey season, I was on probation. And at the end of the year, I was cramming to get back in the good graces and make sure, because if you on probation or you failed, you couldn't play hockey. So I went back my sophomore year and I talked to the coach and I said, "Listen, coach, I can't do this. I have to make money because I got to pay for school." So I quit hockey my sophomore year and I got in a band. And I went from working 40 hours a week to Fridays and Saturday nights and making tons of money, like not tons of money, but I didn't have to go to work every day, after school. It was school, practice, work, school, practice, work, school, practice, work. And we practiced from 3 to 6 every day if we weren't playing a game. So it was tough, If I had a scholarship, I probably would have flunked out because I wouldn't have been going to classes. But I, in my own respect, I ended up on the dean's list my senior year with a 3.8 index. So
good for you. Excellent. The decision paid off.
The decision paid off. And luckily for me, my junior year, they opened the art department, and that's where I excelled. And I graduated as an art major, not a history major, so, but I had all the basics. And the school gave it to me.
That's wonderful. And you've remained close to your alma mater.
Oh, my God, yeah. They won't let me leave.
We most recently had you back, I believe, as the lead band with the reunion weekend last year.
Every 5 years, they call me back and they say, we're having it's our 40th anniversary, it's our 40th reunion, it's our 45th reunion. I've been here every 5 years for the last 20 years playing our reunions, which is great because we captured the youth too. They've had us outside for this one. It was unbelievable. And they brought the Haven Brothers truck in, and oh my God, it was so much fun. And we had some of the younger alumni there, and we captured the campus that night. It was phenomenal.
Well, it's certainly a win for PC whenever you're here, Steve. Who or what influenced you the most when you were here as an undergraduate, would you say? Just basically,
like I said, I came to get an education because my father wanted me to get an education. He said, "What you do after you do college, I don't care, but I want every one of my kids to get a college education." So I did it, I did it for him. And my senior year, I got in Naked Truth in the February of my senior year. And I said to my father, I said, "Wow, this is really cool, because I'm in a really up-and-coming band." So when graduation came around, I had an interview with this little toy company called Hasbro in the art department. My father golfed with a guy named Jerry Pilkington, who was the art director for Hasbro. And I had an interview, and they wanted to hire me in the art department for designing boxes for toys or whatever. And I had just gotten in the band, and I'm like, man, this is really, I don't know what to do here. So I went, I said, "Dad, I'd really like to follow this band thing through while I can and see what happens, And he goes, "Yeah, do whatever you want to do." He said, all I wanted you to do was get out of college education. So I turned him down. I told him I'm going to be a rock and roll star. And it's lasted for 46 years. And look, who knows what would have happened if I had worked for Hasbro. I might be Jerry Pilkington right now,
How do you feel about your music career? Those 45 years, obviously, I'm sure has passed by fairly quickly.
Oh, my God. It's just been amazing. And to be able to do it for as long as we have, and all the guys that are with me, there's 4 of us that are still together from the original band. And it's my job. It's what I was born to do, I guess. To share my gift with other people. And I'm very, very lucky. Very fortunate to have it lasted this long and to have my health. And my health is because I'm still athletic. I still play hockey. I still, stay in shape, and that's the big thing. And we stayed away from the drugs and the alcohol and everything else. we're sponsored by Narragansett Beer, but it's not because we want to drink all the beer we can get for free. It's because they saw a value in us and I saw a value in them. And it's another way of keeping the thing going, Fortunately for me, I can run the business, and that's the hardest part of the whole thing is running the business, taking care of it. And when you're dealing with people that are involved, there's been some clubs where they're involved in that aspect of it, the drugs and the booze and this and that. And you have to you have to keep your nose clean, and my reputation is very important to me, and to be involved in stuff like that would ruin my reputation. So I want to be on the good side of it, not on the bad side of it.
Definitely. Do you still get the same adrenaline when you get up in front of a crowd? If I
didn't, I wouldn't be there. Really, it is great. The easiest part is playing. That's the easiest part is performing. The hard part is moving furniture at the end of the night and at the beginning of the night when you have to, pack up and get out of there. That's what we get paid for.
On that point, I want to say thanks so much for being our guest today, Steve, and really for a fun and introspective conversation.
Well, thank you for having me, and pursue your dreams. That's all I can say to anybody. Pursue your dreams. Whatever's important to you is what you should do. And then it all comes back. Look at me. I was an art major, and then at 1989 when the industry went down and became a weekend business. My father was right. I fell back on my art degree. I started using it, and I started a little business in my house, and it helped me supplement getting my kids to college and school and college. And I got to say one more thing. I had a young girl ask me to help her do. I'm friends with her father, and she said, "Can you help us do something?" I said, "Well, listen, I'll help you do it, but tell her to stay in school. She can. I want her to. I won't get involved. She's going to drop out of college and say, I'm going on the road. I tell her to stay in school because she can still do this while she's going to school. She can still do it. It's a weekend job now, and if she's good, somebody will find her. And if not, she'll have her college degree, and she's going to graduate from Stonehill this year. So, get your education, but it all started out as fun, but it became a reality. You know what I mean?
Great advice from someone who knows it very well. Yeah. Again, thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
And thanks to you, our listeners, for joining us today on the Providence College Podcast. You can subscribe to the podcast in all the usual places, including iTunes, SoundCloud, Stitcher, Google Play, and Spotify. If you like what you hear, please review and share with others. We welcome feedback at podcast@providence.edu. Thanks again to our producer, Chris Judge. I'm Charlie Joyce. Until next time.